Boys are not mandatory, meaning if someone raises one, you do not have to accept it. Or you can hear it out and reject it right after. Timer starts when it starts. Timer starts when it starts.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the legalization of prostitution in the Philippines. As a Prime Minister Speaker for the Opening Governments Act, I strongly support the motion that this House supports the legalization of prostitution in and out of the Philippines. I will present my arguments in three main parts. Firstly, legalizing prostitution will protect the health and safety of sex workers. Studies have shown that criminalization of prostitution often leads to violence against sex workers and their marginalization from healthcare services. Legalization would allow for regulation of the industry, which would increase access to healthcare and reduce the spread of sexually transmitted infections and other diseases. For instance, a study published by The Lancet found that decriminalization of sex work in New Zealand resulted in improved healthcare and safety outcomes for sex workers. Additionally, legalizing prostitution can provide a safer work environment where sex workers can negotiate safe sex practices with clients and report criminalization. Secondly, legalizing prostitution will reduce exploitation and protect the rights of sex workers. Criminalization often leads to the stigmatization and marginalization of sex workers, making them more vulnerable to exploitation. Legalization would allow for the recognition of sex work as a legitimate form of work and afford sex workers the same labor protections as other workers, including the right to collective bargaining, health and safety regulations, and protection from exploitation. Moreover, legalizing prostitution would provide greater transparency and oversight in the industry, making it easier for law enforcement to identify and prosecute traffickers and prevent the exploitation of minors and vulnerable populations. Third, legalizing prostitution will have positive economic impacts on the Philippines. According to a study by the University of Santo Tomas, the underground sex industry in the Philippines generates approximately 2.8 billion Philippine pesos, around 557 million USD per day. By legalizing and regulating the industry, the government could collect tax revenue and redirect funds towards public services and support for sex workers. Furthermore, legalization would create jobs for sex workers and stimulate related industries such as tourism in countries where prostitution is legal, such as the Netherlands and Germany. The industry has become a significant contributor to the local economy, generating employment opportunities and boosting tourism. In conclusion, legalizing prostitution in the Philippines will protect the health and safety of sex workers, reduce exploitation and protect their rights, and have positive economic impacts. The regulation and oversight provided by the legalization can also help prevent human trafficking and improve the overall well-being of sex workers. I urge this House to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that speech.
I wonder how, joke. But is this speech truly the best? Well, let's let the leader of opposition from the opening opposition tell us of their case. Happy to start when you say so, as always.
Timer will stop when you start speaking. You can also give a few statements or like few words before you start your speech if you like. No one?
Majesty afternoon, everyone. Majesty afternoon, juries. Our side believes that prostitution should not be legalized in the Philippines for reasons such as women of legal age under the poverty line are at stake, for the nature of sex work naturally has poor and bad working conditions, health issues that may arise. Prostitution encourages and promotes the acceptance of a poor work. Laws are based off morals and should entail that legalizing an immoral practice such as prostitution is bad, and discrimination would arise against those in the industry, causing social issues. According to demaabolition.org, the idea that legalizing or decriminalizing commercial sex would reduce its harm is a persistent myth. Many claim if the sex trade were legal, regulated and treated like any other profession, it would be safer. But research suggests otherwise. Countries that have legalized or decriminalized commercial sex often experience a surge in human trafficking, pimping, and other related crimes. Point 1. The nature of sex work naturally has poor and bad working conditions. Health issues may arise. According to the BMC Public Health publication, female sex workers are vulnerable to sexually transmitted infections or STIs and encounter socioeconomic and health problems, including STIs and HIV, unintended pregnancy, and complications from unsafe abortion, stigma, violence, and drug addiction. Through this article, we can infer that sex workers are at risk when it comes to their health. Mental, emotional, and physical health. Sex work is a very dangerous and unsafe job, since a lot of infections and diseases are sexually transmitted. According to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, condom use cannot provide absolute protection against any STD. According to PlannedParenthood.org, condoms that go on the male reproductive organ work 85% of the time. This means 15 out of 100 people who use them as their only form of birth control get pregnant each year. Point 2. Prostitution encourages and promotes the acceptance of a poor work. If we legalize prostitution, then it will promote this as an acceptable career choice in society. Women of legal age, especially those under the poverty line, will be encouraged to hold on to this in order to survive. A lot of job opportunities that do not require a degree are available in our society today, such as being a baker, housekeeper, caregiver, and many more that we should be promoting to our citizens instead of prostitution. According to Demand Evolution Report, many claim if sex trade were legal, regulated, and treated like any other profession, it would be safer. But research suggests otherwise. Countries that have legalized or decriminalized commercial sex often experience a surge in human trafficking, pimping, and other related crimes. The US, for example, is one of the countries that legalized prostitution. An investigation of commercial sex industry in 8 American cities found that 36% of prostituted people reported that their buyers were abusive or violent. Another study of prostitution women in San Francisco, massage parlors found that 62% had been beaten by customers. Take in mind that this is only in the USA out of all the 8 countries that legalized abortion. Legalized prostitution. Point 3. Laws are based on morals and should entail that legalizing an immoral practice such as prostitution is bad. Laws protect our general safety and ensure our rights as citizens against abuses by other people, by organizations, and by the government itself. We have laws to help provide for our general safety. So why do we legalize something that would put our fellow citizens at stake? Point 4. Discrimination would arise against those in the industry causing social issues. According to an article written by Paul Bird, only in rare cases are they protected by legal and justice systems, with most sex workers often being at risk of physical and verbal violence, stigmatization, human rights abuse, and social and legal discrimination. All of the above leaves them prone to contracting degenerative diseases without having the agency to seek medical assistance, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and social isolation. We can infer that living as a prostitute, despite the income that they acquire, the suffering and danger outweighs. Remember, we are making laws to ensure safety to our citizens. Prostitution must only promote objectification of humans. To conclude, we believe that the Philippines is not ready to legalize prostitution, since there are already existing contemporary issues that are not addressed and fixed that may worsen once prostitution will be legalized, such as abortion for times like accidental pregnancy. There are too many factors to take into account to have a safe and stable system for prostitution. Legalizing prostitution will not help the Philippines, but instead, it will create more issues in our society that the state is not ready to face. Thank you.
Amazing.
Now, I asked how will we respond given that wonderful speech. After that, I'd like to call on back to the first side. Opening government, I'd like to call on the Deputy Prime Minister. Clap noises.
Betanitan.
Honorable Chair, esteemed judges, and fellow debaters, today we argue that prostitution should be legalized. We believe that legalizing prostitution is essential to ensure the safety and well-being of sex workers and to prevent exploitation and abuse that often accompany illegal prostitution. Firstly, the criminalization of prostitution has failed to protect the health and safety of sex workers. According to a study published in The Lancet, criminalization is associated with increased risk of violence, HIV, and other sexually transmitted infections. and reduce access to health care and support services. Legalizing prostitution would provide sex workers with greater protection and control over their working conditions as well as access to legal and health services. Second, legalization can help protect sex workers from the violence and abuse. Studies have shown that sex workers who have operated in countries where prostitution is legal and regulated are less likely to experience violence or abuse than those who work in a legal and unregulated environment. For example, a study in the Netherlands found that the introduction of legalized prostitution led to a decline in prevalence of violence against sex workers. Legalization also enables sex workers to report incidents of violence or abuse to the police without fear of arrest or prosecution, which further increases their safety and protection. As a proposition team, we acknowledge that some individuals may be coerced or forced into sex work, which is unacceptable and requires appropriate intervention and support. However, not legalizing prostitution does not necessarily prevent or address this issue effectively. In fact, criminalizing prostitution can further endanger vulnerable individuals, including those who are forced or forced into sex work, by driving it underground and exposing them to more exploitation, violence, and abuse. Legalizing prostitution, on the other hand, can provide a framework for regulating the industry and implementing safeguards to protect sex workers, including those who may be victims of trafficking or coercion. This can include measures such as mandatory health screening, access to support, and regulating ensures sex workers have the ability to negotiate their working conditions, including rate hours and fines. Moreover, legalizing prostitution can create opportunities for sex workers to access support and exit services, as they are more likely to come forward and seek help when they are not criminalized or stigmatized. This can enable them to access resources and support to leave the industry if they choose to do so. Finally, it is important to recognize the voices of sex workers themselves in this debate. Many sex workers have spoken out in favor of legalization, arguing that it can help to improve their working conditions and provide greater protection and rights. For example, a survey of sex workers in New Zealand, where prostitution is illegal, found that the majority of respondents felt that the legal framework had improved their working conditions and reduced the stigma associated with their work. In conclusion, legalizing prostitution can help to ensure the safety and well-being of sex workers, prevent exploitation of minors and vulnerable populations, and provide greater protection and right for those involved in the industry. We urge you to support this important policy changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister, for that wonder.
I wonder how this will change the momentum of the debate. Well, let's see what the deputy leader of the opposition from the opening operation will do to change this perspective. Again, timer starts whenever you are ready.
I'd like to call the Deputy Leader of Opposition from Great Land St. Peter Canisius. Thank you. Wait, there are some issues.
Hello?
Majesty everyone and Majesty juries. Our side strongly believes that prostitution should not be legal. Prostitution is the act of engaging in sexual activity with someone for payment. Prostitution has many effects on society, negatively. Legalizing prostitution would support female objectification, in which is a human rights violation. Prostitution is an act of sexual exploitation and violence against women and girls. It is an exploitative system that commodifies, objectifies, and dehumanizes women. Making prostitution illegal will encourage prostitutes and pimps, brothels, to quit their so-called profession. Men who pay for sex, according to a 2015 study conducted by the researchers at the University of California, Los Angeles, are not only less likely to have empathy toward women, but are also more likely to commit rape in the future. Comparing about 100 men who paid for sex to 100 who didn't, the researchers who found those who paid exhibited higher levels of sexually aggressive behaviors. They were more likely to be antisocial, have a preference for impersonal sex, and express their masculinity in hostile ways. Legalizing prostitution and implementing it as a job will only worsen discrimination. People will judge and criticize prostitution as a fake job. An example of this is influencers getting hateful comments and death threats because of how their job is, how the state of their living is. You may say that prostitution is the reason for human trafficking. However, the main reason for human trafficking is poverty/money. Yes, prostitution is one of the causes of that. However, human trafficking comes in different forms such as slavery, porters, and more. So legalizing prostitution won't stop human trafficking. Prostitution is immoral and is a sin to Christianity and Islam and many other religions. Both religions condemn prostitution, and if we were to legalize it, it would wash away the sanctity of being a religiously active person. Let's take Philippines for example. Philippines is the only Christian nation in Asia. Legalizing prostitution would soon integrate into the Philippines culture and could cause conflicts. It should be clear that the many reports of violence and how dangerous the profession is will encourage prostitutes to find another profession. There are countless jobs to replace prostitution entirely. According to New York Times, prostitutes earn as little as $5 per sex act, which can easily be replaced by jobs that pay minimum wage. Prevention is better than cure. That's why it's better to stop and remove prostitution than to legalize it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for your speech. That concludes the opening half of this debate. This year has been an interesting exchange of ideas so far. What did you say, Matthew?
On that topic, actually, with the request of the panelists, granted permission rather, I will allot 2 minutes for anyone here to take the microphone. In the absence that no one will take the microphone, we'll proceed on to the closing half. This is an opportunity for anyone to refute any statements on any side. I'll leave this here for 2 minutes.
You will be given 2 minutes. Feel free to take 1 minute.
Wait on the sports. What's the blue tag?
Regarding religion, as the opposing opposition stated that religion it's a sin to it's basically bad against religion to legalize prostitution. As once my social studies teacher said, she stated she saw there was a story of a priest who would hand out condoms to prostitutes, knowing that they would not be safe, but at least he would be protecting them in their ways, treating it as a job. He would be saving them. It would help them practice safe sex. By legalizing prostitution, we could have that widespread instead of only in small places. And taking that from the people who have no place to go, who have run to prostitution, it's depriving them of the right to a job, the right to income. It is
Ray. When you accept or reject, you can accept or reject.
I reject. Secondly, opposition, I've noticed that they've also agreed on our stance. I've noticed that they've agreed on our stance of legalizing prostitution. Prostitution should be legalized as it provides a good source of income for poor people, like you said, to have some place to go. I'm sorry.
Point raised by the panelists.
I shall drop the mic.
Please stand proper before the judges of the
Make a mama, make a move.
I would like to rebut.
Hello. Also, Stan, are you, Mr. Speaker, are you going to rebut what they said, or are you going to move on to your closing speech?
I will rebut on what the
government prime minister said in his
Okay, very well. You will have 2 minutes to make your rebuttal. I will mention when the 2 minutes is up, so timer starts when you speak.
Tatong art sa board yan. Tatong picture. Picture.
Alright, so the government prime minister in his opening speech mentioned that the legalization of prostitution will decrease the amount of stigma that is attached to prostitution and prostitutes in general. However, research in the Netherlands, where prostitution was legalized, shows that even after it was legalized, there was still stigma attached, and thus most of the prostitutes would still operate illegally and underground because they do not want to register to pay tax, because they would be then outed as prostitutes. They do not want, and that identity will follow them everywhere they go if they are legally registered as a prostitute. Yeah.
There's only one last statement, please.
Any other-
Opening government, opening government, opening government, please relax.
When you take the free for all, right, please state your position and your bench, please.
Thank you. I also be a last line of opposition, and as you have said, legalizing would make it safer, right? You have said that here. Another study shows not only through the usage of condoms that we could observe safe sex, but of course through contraceptives as well. But another study from NHS England, the typical use of contraceptive pills is only 91% effective. Meaning, if the person don't take it every day consistently, there is a chance of accidental pregnancy. Thus saying that no matter what, there will still be a chance of accidental pregnancy, even if the safety will be the safety will still be at risk at this point, even if it is legalized, even with the usage of condoms and contraceptive pills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Are there any?
Last one, please.
Mr. Speaker, since your bench spoke before, we will give the mic to the government. And please, equity, reminder of equity, and just a first warning. Please do not conduct physical violence on the stage. That is minus langit points. Ms. Speaker, you have 2 minutes to speak. Timer starts when you're speaking. Good luck and God bless.
From what is stated from my fellow debater, sir, he stated that legalizing prostitution in Netherlands, legalizing prostitution did not technically help the people or prostitutes when it comes to money or taxes or safety, since they are going underground and since they refuse to pay their taxes. But then again, this has nothing to do with the fact that prostitution exists. This is something to do with human error and the laziness to pay taxes or anything else. They are given the chance to pay taxes, they are given a chance to earn money, but they choose not to because they do not want to. Not because of their being prostitutes, but because they are lazy. Their views. And also from them, can you provide evidence that criminalizing prostitution has been effective in reducing the harms and risks associated with the industry? How do you propose to protect the rights and well-being of sex workers if prostitution remains illegal underground?
Thank you so much. That concludes that free for all session, please. Thank you. Now I would like to move on. Please. As
Just a reminder, in connections, you have your first warning, which you warnings in
Di ba you were the one selling?
It's okay.
Okay, so we will have one last free for all.
No. We're gonna allow you. You're gonna be the last one.
Please.
What?
Okay, I just want to say, laws are mostly based on morals and should entail that legalizing an immoral practice such as prostitution is bad. The fact that abortion and drugs are still debatable implies that religion and morals are mostly involved. Almost 2.5 billion people are Christians. 2 billion people are Islamic. Most of these people base morals on the religion. So if we let prostitution into our daily lives or into like legalized, then it just defeats the whole purpose of our own morals. Thank you.
Thank you, please. That is enough time. This is a great time for us to hear that. Thank you very much. I'd like to start on, I'd like to continue the speech. I'd like to call on from the closing government side, member of government here. You have someone ready to speak? You can say anything before you start your speech. I'd like to also remind you guys that you can rebut at the start of your statement and you can raise voice. Okay.
Boys are not.
You can start now.
So, nice afternoon, audience. Nice afternoon, the babies. I would just like to state that we support the legalization of prostitution. Firstly, I would like to start my speech with a quote. Ronald Reagan once said, "The government's first duty is to protect the people, as lives continue to run forward in an open way." Noting down the possible mishaps that may exist in the areas of this work, we can say that there is full encouragement of the implementation of laws that will offer protection to the workers. There will be regulations to follow to protect and maintain order for these workers. Again, we believe that there are no direct victims when one enters into the business, as it is a choice that begins with the choice. It is a direction that one may choose to follow. It is given to the government as a duty to protect these sanctuaries. So, the state of Nevada can be used as an example of a developing nation that shows how prostitution is a major export industry and source of societal and economical earnings. According to the ISET Policy Institute, an annual tax revenue exceeds $20,000 in this area. The Netherlands also holds a long tradition of regulated tolerance toward prostitution. Besides well-known window prostitution and red light districts, the Dutch government also regulates other parts of the industry. Our empirical results show that the opening tipple zone reduces abuse and rape. These results are mainly driven by a 30 to 40% reduction in the first 2 years after opening the tipple zone. So I would like to furthermore expound on how it can reduce rape. Substantially reduces rape and other sex crimes and enhances the safety of workers and clients while reducing the spread of infectious disease. Regulating prostitution sex workers would require regulations similar to those used by healthcare workers. Infection barriers should be mandatory and consistent with a public information campaign to promote the use of condoms. Meanwhile, sex workers can be licensed by self-governing associations or colleagues, and a regular STI test series set as a precondition to licensing. Regulations would seek a strong adherence to all public health requirements that arise as responses to new microbial threats. So I would like to take the Netherlands as an example. So in the Netherlands, prostitution is legal, and this is how it is. Mandatory licensing. Business in the sex industry, for instance, sex clubs, brothels, and escort agencies will only be allowed to operate with a license from the municipal authority. The conditions for obtaining a license will include a guarantee of sex workers, health and safety. A commercial sex operation will only be given a license if it has a fixed address and a telephone landline. To ensure that the rules are equally strict all over the country, the same conditions will essentially apply in every municipality. 2. Screening of the owners of businesses in the sex industry. The owners of commercial sex operations will be screened more thoroughly. Municipalities will do background checks on them.
Let's go, Maria.
As per usual, you can say anything to anyone here, everyone as a whole, before you start your speech. Yeah? Ooh, mask up. Okay, sorry.
Oh, Maria. One after.
This house does not believe prostitution should be legalized. Although there are many social, moral, and ethical factors to consider, as the opening opposition stated, we should
We should shift the focus to the well-being of the prostitutes themselves, as well as the rising sex trafficking industry. So, prostitution involves a lot of abuse, sexual trafficking, violence, and pimping. These sex workers are rented out, and a lot of them are extorted. The deputy leader of opposition mentioned that the legalization would solve the issue, would solve the stigma that is going on around prostitutes. However, legalizing this would not solve the issue of dehumanization and violence. I would like to expound on these with the following points. A study based in India and Philippines stated that a lot of sex workers joined out of necessity rather than choice. They faced stigma and could not go back anymore. Thus, it was a constrained choice of being prostitutes. Another, it risks the safety and well-being of the sex workers. Each sex work gets paid. So with added deviancies and fetishes, they would get paid more. Those cornered with less fortunes are pushed to agree to these demands and are put in danger, and violence would be promoted. New Zealand's Prostitution Law Review Committee found that majority of prostitute persons felt that discrimination did do little violence that occurred. The committee further reported that abusive brothels did not improve conditions for prostituted individuals. The brothels that had unfair management practices continued with them even after the decriminalization. So even if prostitution is legalized, it still acts criminal due to the continued use of secrecy, anonymity, and secret cash transfers. Even if it is legalized, it will be closely related to the criminal organizations thus being related to the criminal market, involving drugs, gangs, and pimps. So a study in Netherlands evaluations have found that regulations of prostitution creates a facade of legitimacy that hides sexual exploitation, and that brothels can function as legalized outlets for victims of sex trafficking. That is all, thank you.
Let's go, Marie.
Now, bringing the phone up once again, I'd like to leave this microphone. I'll leave that microphone there for, thinking. Anyone want to say anything? The microphone is left unattended for a minute. I will move on to the next. Yo, don't raise. It's okay.
For sex work. Reduce violence and exploitation and empower them to access essential health and social services. Also, as we're in the topic of religion, can we please stop stating anything related to religion as it is not part of the debate, nor should it be allowed? Stated from our debate teacher from grade 7. Also, there were many interviews, and one I'm particularly known of as a sex worker herself stated that she enjoyed her job because she implied rules, regulations, and safety to keep her job in a proper, orderly way, and where her clients are respectful to her, which she claims that she wishes that many prostitutes has the chance to experience the safetiness. Or the problem is that we're focusing on the safety of prostitutes and a way to make it safer for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone want to say anything about that?
So I would like to say that generally speaking, the government side has been mentioning about the legal protections that sex workers would obtain. Well, in fact, even if they would obtain these legal health protection, Evidences from previous studies indicate that women in sex work may also experience a high burden of mental illness, especially mood disorders, suicidal ideation, and post-traumatic stress disorder or PSD. Now, I would like to point out that help has been available for them because we all know that they will really go through something that would affect the leader of government, leader of closing government rather, has also stated that this is to protect the people. What about the negative stigma of society? Do you think that legalizing prostitution would stop this negative stigma of society? Wouldn't you think that discrimination would be worsened? Are we ready to face the discrimination?
Yeah, accept the point. I need to speak.
Matches afternoon to the honorable adjudicators, to the opposing team, to the chair, to the audience. I am a member of the government team representing the government bill. This House stands with the motion of legalizing prostitution. In looking at the arguments made by the opposition team, we see that the arguments presented is that safety discrimination is prone once prostitution is legal. But we have to take into account the opportunities given to us, which is the chance to be able to use the government to promote this needed and aid and protection. Presenting my first point. The key statement that we face is protection against discrimination. It is a calling that is present in today's society and remains a value that we must bring. In this battle against the injustices that surround the citizens of our nation, we have brought decriminalization and legalization as a tool of advantage that will be used in this protection. One of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SGDs, is the objective in achieving good health and well-being and added protection. This is number 3 on the global agenda list. This is what we need in a society of uncertainty, and we strive to bring this life for the people. As the government side mentioned, it is not a force but is placed for as a chance that is presented for the nation. This is a vital idea as it emphasizes the light that we are able to share for those around us, especially those who are in need. As we all know, discrimination and abuse occur in the uncharted areas of a growing society. This gives us a need for assurance or protection, especially in the current industry. Noting this down, if the government legalizes prostitution, it will give them the right to work together, which will truly promote safety that we need as a vital value for the people. We can say that the government will be an aid or a shield to promote this business that is presented to the people. According to the Human Rights Watch articles, decriminalizing sex work maximizes the workers' legal protection and their ability to exercise other key rights, including justice and health. Presenting the next point. As the Talk for the People is presented, the government side stands on the line of the spectrum of the word choice. A factor of the general definition of prostitution is that it is or may be treated as work in a society. As the government side mentioned, moral is given to us as a free but the industry is truly a choice. According to legal study materials articles, groups that relate to the prostitution say that workers enter into this area with their choice. If any person enters into prostitution with free will, then he or she should not be stopped by anybody, as it is a right that is contained with that said individual. Another one of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SGDs, is the objective of developing decent growth and economic growth, which is number 8 on the agenda list. Presenting my last point. In looking at another perspective, we can see the growth of the economy in offering a new path of income. One of the fundamental reasons why individuals may indulge in prostitution is a result of destitution. As a context for everyone, destitution is presented as the form of lacking the basic necessities of life. One of the Sustainable Development Goals, as said earlier, was number 8 on the global agenda list. We relate this to the opportunity of a new work. Individuals now will be given a chance to indulge themselves in this business to acquire their needed source of income. An aspect of obligation of living as it would assist workers with acquiring satisfactory pay and fulfilling their fundamental needs. We open our eyes to see poverty surrounding the base of our nation. And as citizens, we must strive to promote new ways to give aid to those who truly need it. And how we do this is, of course, to instate new rules able to share.
Where are you?
We are the future of the world.
Go to the high
And
school
as
lobby.
we know, income
High
is
school
the
lobby
must
ka,
of
mami.
society.
Ang meron theater man.
This is now a chance for this needed growth. To end my speech, I would like to say a quote by Dr. Kathleen Hall. In your acts,
go
you
to
choose
the
a
high
direction,
school lobby
and your
and
life is
follow
not
me if
product
you're
of
there.
choices. Thank you.
Most of the prostitutes, in fact, felt that the law did little to protect them from the abuse. And furthermore, legalizing prostitution will promote and benefit the various illegal trades that are related to it, as in human trafficking. In a dozen NGOs in Europe found that after the decriminalization of prostitution in the Netherlands, there was actually an increase of human trafficking into the country. It found that the permits that were used for sex workers actually were used as pawns. What I'm saying is that the brothels are used as a facade of legality that hides, that behind it is hiding a, what do you call it? The sex trade, basically. The trafficking of people. So, especially in the Philippines, as we know, this is majority Catholic country, that most people are what would be called as conservative. Therefore, by legalizing, decriminalizing prostitution, there would be more stigma attached to the prostitutes themselves. Right now they are like under covers. By legalizing it, they would be forced to come out and register themselves. They would be forced to come out and say what they are doing, what they are working. They would be forced to show themselves as prostitutes. And I feel that the environment in this country would not be healthy for that outing. Finally, yeah, I rest my case.
Thank you so much for that. I'd like to leave the mic open once more for the final time. This is your final chance to wrap up any loose ends in your speeches. Thank you.
I would like to shine up on the fact that my adversary, my fellow debater, if you would, stated that prostitutes get abused. That's no fault of prostitution being criminalized. That's the fault of the client being disrespectful. The client thinking that he has the power because what will they do? Who will they run to? Please sit down. Who will they run to? Will they run to the police?
If they don't be respectful.
Would they run to the police, who will still arrest them if they are found out? If we legalize it, they'll still have a place to go. They will have their own protection. Now, state that PTSD, depression, where are you getting all of that? Any sources? I would also like to say that what you asked a question. Us legalizing prostitution, what would it help? It would give us any little bit of protection to give those who think that they have a chance, like those who think they have a chance in succeeding in this work, in surviving, in continuing, giving them protection. Do you really want to continue down a path, giving these so many troubles by criminalizing prostitution? Do you giving us the chance to lessen, maybe even eliminate abuse in the prostitution, sex work industry, like at all, is still a better chance than letting them suffer.
Yeah, you can.
As the government prime minister has said, that the abuse of prostitutes is not on prostitution, but on the clients. So therefore, by you are promoting the abuse of prostitutes by clients. Also, you should sit down, please. Then, as well, moving, how can you guarantee the what do you call it? The protection of the prostitutes? Because let's be honest, how many people want to have a bodyguard in the room with them while they're, with the prostitute? Or cameras. You cannot guarantee the protection of the prostitutes, and you cannot guarantee that the clients will not harm the yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to point out my statement was being questioned. I would like to say that it came from the National Library of Medicine, a publication on women's health. Now, the next thing I would like to say to probably wrap up this debate is that what the government side is doing is basically saying that legalizing prostitution would give them protection, right? So it means that the nature of prostitution needs protection. Thus saying that prostitution has again, going back to my first point, the nature of sex work naturally has poor and bad working conditions. And legalizing it will just provide solutions, but it wouldn't eliminate those bad sex work conditions. So they're only providing solutions, but it does not stop the stigma. And also to add to that, legalizing it, they would already be shed light and would be normalized as a normal career path. Thus, it would increase stigma and discrimination since they will be brought to light. Thank you. Thank you.
This is the last one, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to state that we are, you were asked if we were promoting abuse and discrimination when it comes to legalizing prostitutes. But the thing is, reality check, we have been criminalizing prostitution, and yet still they have been abused, murdered, used like they're nothing because they're not humans but a human eye of strangers. The thing is, legalizing prostitution, we're more focused on protecting and helping these individuals from the people who have more power and ability to hurt them. I would like to state a fact on a murder that was unjustified. A transgender human being who was a prostitute was murdered, yet was not justified. Her murder was not justified, and the president did not really do anything when it comes to this murder. And it seems so unfair, and our whole point of legalizing is to help these people. Our whole point is to make sure these people feel safe in their working environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that wraps that up. I'm sure everyone has something they want to say about not only this debate, but also the motion itself about the nature of prostitution and whether or not it's moral. But I would like to remind everyone, people in the audience, people on both sides of the bench, that at the end of the day, debate is an intellectual practice. It is not. It is an exercise in reasoning and persuasion. It is not basis on what is morally correct or what you should or should not do.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank all of you debaters here. And as per tradition, I'd like you all to cross hands. And while we wait for these panelists to deliberate, I'll just assume that you guys are still deliberating. I'll have some performances here commissioned by the band. You're welcome.
Everyone give it up.
Performances are given to give time for the jury to discuss the performance of every debater. Alright? Boys, you want to do your voice now? Very nice.
So whenever nasa labas, do you want to say anything? Mary, our jury of Hurtado.
He had stated that the legalization of prostitution would further make discrimination towards prostitutes even more severe or worse. While legalizing prostitution would give an occupation of would make prostitution occupation and would give them furthermore would give them rights according to the law and even more legit system.
Thank you.
It kept stopping. It kept stopping. Uy, nag-usa. Ako nag-uuna. Oh my god. Killer, cut that. Don't even.
How you do this? How do you do it?
Don't even sing this. Two times. Oh, let's go Herschel TV.
Can you hold it?
And I'm going back to 505. My imagination, you're waiting, lying on your side.